Now, viewers, the world has entered 2024 and a happy new year on that note. From policymakers to the general public, everyone is hoping for a stable and growing economy this year. In our next report, we tell you 5 big things that are likely to shape the global economy in 2024. Take a look.
The world has been in a bad shape since 2020. First, it was the COVID-related disruptions. Then the Ukraine war disrupted supply chains. And all this contributed to the slowdown last year. Global projections for 2024 are also not very rosy. A lot would depend on these 5 factors this year. Everyone expects the US Fed to start cutting rates from April this year. The economy continues to grow and inflation is closer to the Fed's 2% target. Many expect at least 3 rate cuts this year, which will likely give a boost to the global economy. This will give a thumbs up to other central banks to follow suit. However, if inflation makes a comeback or tensions heighten in West Asia, the Fed may be forced to keep the rates steady or worse, raise them. The Ukraine war, tensions in West Asia, or the rivalry between the US and China, all of them have had a significant impact on the global economy in recent years. They have disrupted the global economy, threatening to fragment the supply chains. These tensions will spill over to 2024 too. The rivalry between the US and China will be closely watched. Any action across the Taiwan Straits will have global ramifications. More so, a black swan event will add to the uncertainties. Slower economic growth raises the fear of a recession in 2024. However, the US is likely to skip the recession this year, defying odds. But the Eurozone, struggling for a while now, is unlikely to get lucky. There is a likelihood of the Eurozone remaining in the technical recession. The worst hit will be the UK, which is on the cusp of a recession. The debt burden is likely to remain a big concern. Especially in the developing world, debt servicing costs will rise by 39% for the 24 poorest countries this year. The poorest countries face a huge $3.5 trillion debt burden. In the absence of any resolution mechanism, they could default. The focus will be on the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and China, which are the biggest lenders. Any resolution to the debt crisis in 2024 will depend on these key players. Finally, over half of humanity will go to polls covering at least 40 countries. They represent half of the world GDP, raising the stakes for businesses. India, the US and the UK are among the major countries set to go to polls this year. Any expected or unexpected political changes will have economic implications for the world. So brace yourself for an interesting year ahead. 2024 could well be a make or break year for the world economy. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And now for more on this, we are being joined by Dr. Suyash Bhatt, Director at AFTI, live from Dubai. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Morning.
Mr. Bhatt, let's start off with this. How will a likely Fed rate cut impact the global economy, if you can weigh in on that for us?
So I believe in last 2 years, a lot of problems have occurred in the world due to this rate hikes that happened. So, just to give you a context, we were at close to 0.75% in 2021, at the end of 2021. And we saw rate going all the way up to 5.5%. And now that inflation, which was at US inflation, which was at close to 7% and even higher, which was a 40-year high, has now seen a bit of cool down. You can expect Fed to cut rate in coming terms by at least 25 basis point to begin with in this year, and this would see a huge influx of a liquidity, which would again come in the market, because you need to understand when the Fed increases the interest rate, the global capital from around the world starts rushing to US, because if I can get a better rate in US without any risk, why should I invest in an emerging market? So this would have an impact again, easing of pressure for the global central banks and economies around the world. And also it is a big trend, and that's why you see that S&P going and making a higher highs in last 2 weeks, and which is something as an indication, because people are really worried that if we are at 5.5, what would happen if we go to 6 or 7? And these are rates which are like, very high rates, from 2% relative. It also led to some banks collapsing, because imagine if I borrow at 2% and lend at 3%, and now suddenly you make the interest rate 5%. So I have lend at 3% and I have to borrow at a higher rate. It has a massive impact. So you saw many of the California state banks like SVB and others going bankrupt. So it created actually an havoc, and this sigh of relief that Fed is not going to increase rate itself was a cheer. And now if a rate cut comes, that would be like icing on the cake. And it is expected that it may cut rate by at least 50 to 75 basis point in this year. But yeah, we have to be cautious, and as I think your newsline captured, unless something, a black swan event happens, some flare up again happens somewhere else, that should be a word of caution. Otherwise, I think based on data, if you see.
Yeah, I mean, we need to definitely exercise caution, but it will be an icing on the cake. Dr. Bhatt, I also wanted to come to you with this now. Of course, geopolitical events, and we all know the way geopolitics has been, how dynamic it has been all through 2023 with the ongoing wars and so many more events, so many skirmishes, so many other events, diplomacy at its peak. Also wanted to check with you, how will these events impact the global economic trajectory in 2024, and what is the likelihood of a widespread recession in this year?
So we have been talking about recession since beginning of 2023, actually. And one of the unique situation which we are in is, when does a recession happen? When you have a negative growth and you have a, high unemployment. And both of these generally are caused by higher interest rate. Now, what has happened uniquely in last 5-10 years is that the Fed has printed so much money in the market that even after increasing interest rates so much, it hasn't been able to impact really unemployment. So the unemployment figure, if you see, they were not so bad as you would see probably when the 1973 war happened or any other such event happened. So from a statistics perspective, this was a very unique situation. And also now in last 4 or 5 years, I feel whether it's global market or whether it is Fed or the central bank, the war or the geopolitics has somewhat, these disruptions have become somewhat like a new normal. So it began with the Russian war, and I remember I was on WION at that time, and it was something really scary, because out of COVID you really don't know what's going to happen, and now you're probably still they're fighting, but the world seems to moved on, and now in October a new war started. And I think people are adjusting to this. Again, it's not good to say that wars are good, but the markets or the federal banks or the central banks seem to get adjusted to this as a phenomena over a period of time. Not immediately. Immediately, definitely, it would be a shock. And but I think people seem to have moved on from that. And I think these wars are also expensive. So you can see that kind of fatigueness in both these, new escalations which have happened, that both the parties need to find some kind of a solution to end it, because it's not cheap to basically fight a war in these times. So,
but as far as the recession is concerned, do you feel we will see one in 2024?
So it is unlikely. The reason being, if the rate cut starts happening quickly, then probably you would find that a positive impact of economies, again, spending, borrowing starts. So us going and hitting into recession globally may be a lesser chance. But again, there is a caveat to this. Not all countries may escape it. Like, for example, UK or many countries in Europe or in other parts of the world, like Argentina, they already have a messed up state of affairs. So
widespread recession, there's a lesser chance of that, but all countries may not be able to evade that.
Correct.
All right.
That's correct.
Dr. Suyesh Bhatt, thank you so much for joining in on World Business Watch. Always a pleasure to speak with you and get your insights on this. We will be in touch for more details.
Thank you.